This time around, we're going to be talking about Paradise Alley. It's Sylvester Stallone's directorial debut from 1978, also starring Stallone, written by Stallone, and the theme tune sung by Stallone.
It's based on a novel written by Sylvester Stallone, which was based on another script written by Sylvester Stallone.
It's his, not vanity project, but the project that you get to make after a massive hit, which obviously in his case was Rocky. It's the story of three brothers struggling in post-Second World War New York. The lazy schemer, the tragic educated brother, and the good-hearted
Man Mountain.
good-hearted man-child man-mountain as they find their way through crime-ridden post-war Hell's Kitchen.
Yeah,
Is that
that's kind of it. Yeah, yeah. I think you sort of nailed it. I can detect the lack of enthusiasm
No, I
for
was just trying to
this movie in your
trying to
voice.
corral this very strange uneven film into a plot.
I'm gonna jump straight in and say first saw this film when I was 9 years old, and my affection for it is still that childlike forgiveness of
Right.
all the things that are wrong with it because of all the things I love about it. So I guess I'll be in the blue corner. I'll be fighting for Paradise Alley.
That's weird. I thought it was so some deep background on Shane. He used to be an avid Stallone fan.
I am still a Stallone fan. You know, I forgive him some of his awful
But
choices.
he was one of your kind of gateway people into movies, wasn't he?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
totally, totally. Yeah, I saw Rocky and Rocky 2 and Paradise Alley in the same year. In fact, I think maybe it just went straight to TV here because it flopped in the States like massively. Jerry Zeisman, who was Stallone's AD on Rocky 2 when Paradise Alley was released, and he was saying like thousands of people would come to the set every day to watch Stallone filming Rocky 2, but none of them went to the theatre to see Paradise Alley,
Mm.
and he was saying the slide to that quite hard.
Do you? I mean, is there anything about the making of the movie that you know?
It's more, I think, anecdotal stuff as you're going through scene by scene, who the kind of actors are, and how some of the people that Sly's working with in this carry on as collaborators all the way through.
Mm.
There's something quite nice about the loyalty, even if the execution isn't there as a filmmaker. I think there's definitely that sort of band of brothers aspect to his career, which is quite nice.
I suppose that carries through to Amanda Sante being in it, and also the horrible Ray Starkey's in it too. They all work together on Lords of Flatbush.
Yeah, well, I've seen Lords of Flatbush a couple of times, and I can never see Armand Asante in the film. He's supposed to
Yes,
be in the wedding at the end,
good.
but God knows where he is. But also, that Sly and Asante played brothers again in Dread.
Oh God, yeah, because he's one of the direct-to-video kings. Along
Yeah,
with,
I mean, what's his kind of highlights? Is it Q&A? Is he in that with?
yeah, but I don't like his performance in that either. I had a look through his IMDb, and you assume that he would have started out strong and then kind of, graduated down to direct-to-video the way that some unfortunate careers
I
do.
just
But
realised I've got notes here on like loads of notes on every other actor, and I just wrote Armand Asante's name down and didn't bother googling or.
but it all seems quite low key, quite small releases, and
Yeah, yeah.
then eventually become. I don't know. I
We talked about him before being in The Deuce, and that was the kind of he plays Franco's dad, doesn't he? That was a
yeah
half decent performance.
yeah I don't know. There's a vanity about him that I don't like.
Mhm.
I feel that he feels cruel to say it, especially putting it out into the world. But this is just an opinion podcast, so
Yeah,
you've got to state
you're
your
welcome to
opinion.
your opinion.
I just feel there's like a weird sort of vanity and entitlement, as if he somehow feels going into a character that he's on a par with like a Pacino or any of
Oh,
his
right,
kind of
okay.
peers.
And what do you think about this as his kind of debut?
I liked him earlier in the film when he was low key,
Hmm.
but again, if I can imagine it's like watching a play with somebody who wants to be a movie star in it, doing what they feel is the appropriate movie
Sure,
star
sure.
performance, but it's not actually getting into the character or
Mm.
doing anything more than being a performance. It
Yeah, right.
doesn't feel particularly honest or
So you
true.
don't think he puts the work in to make that transition between the two sides of the character?
Well, I think I don't think there's anything he could do in this because the transition literally happens at the snap of the fingers within a montage. But
Yeah,
after
that's
one
true.
fight, he's suddenly changed
Yeah,
character.
it's I think you see the foundations here of Sly's work as a montage filmmaker.
Yeah.
I don't know. Have you even seen Rocky Four?
Yes, I have. That's one of the ones I've seen.
Yeah,
I've seen one, two, and four.
it's basically like seven montages strung together.
So you were fond of it as a 9 year old and you've stayed with it throughout your life. I mean, how did you feel coming to it now with a slightly more critical eye?
I'd say the critic was in the back seat, and
Right.
and I just sat there and had that same kind of pleasurable experience that I had as a 9 year old. But I think my 9 year old brain was definitely in the driving seat. So
Right.
and I brought like some other references to the experience. So looking at Laszlo Kovac's work on this, I was blown away by it. I think it's
Yes.
really beautiful. And a couple of years ago, I saw an exhibition at the RA, and it was George Bellows, the painter,
Mm.
and some of his like New York paintings from the 1920s of boxers falling out of the ring, and these sort of big burly men battling in the the square circle of the gladiators arenas of these backstreet bars. It feels like that must have been a reference for Kovac in this, because that's what a lot of the pictures, especially the big climax, they all look like that. And just had these little moments of acknowledgement of some of the craft in it. But
Mm.
yeah, I squirm as much now as I did then with some of the speeches and dialogue and character stuff. When you're a 9 year old, you just want to skim past that, and I still had the same feeling as a grown up. But
Mm.
period details are nice. Nice to see a
Yeah.
70s New York. Looking like the
It's
40s.
timeless, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
even the exteriors
Mm.
look incredible.
That's before they cleaned it all up. It looks great.
Mm. I mean, Kovac must have. He's just coming off a run of period movies
Oh
anyway.
my
He did
god, yeah, yeah.
Paper Moon and New York, New York. So it just must have been.
I did write it down because I was just so impressed with the work that he's doing at that point. Hell's Angels on Wheels, Man Called Dagger, Psych Out, Savage 7, Freebie and the Bean, Paper Moon. He worked on Targets, Easy Rider, The Last Movie, Five Easy Pieces, King of Marvin Gardens.
Mm,
It's a pretty impressive run, isn't it?
yeah.
He slowed down though, didn't he, after that?
He continued doing good work through the 70s and then into the 80s. I think when I checked IMDb, the last thing that I would profess an interest in was Say Anything about
Oh yeah,
1989,
okay, yeah, yeah.
which wasn't a remarkable looking movie. But and then throughout the 90s, it's pretty much.
He's one of the Close Encounters guys as well, isn't
Everyone worked on Close
he? Yeah.
Encounters. So Vilmos Sigmund did the bulk of the work, but you've got Alan Davio, Haskell Wexler. Basically, everyone did a little bit of extra work on that because it just went on and on and on and
Yeah,
on.
okay.
I think Vilmos went on to do the Deer Hunter straight off the back of it or something. So I guess talking about the visuals is a good segue into the beginning of the film. It opens with a 1930s Universal logo.
I know, that's nice, isn't it?
Well, it is, but it's a film set in 1946.
Yeah, it's 1946 and Hell's Kitchen, which is the year of Sly's birth and the place where he was born. So I think there's a little throwback there.
And the opening shots are kind of desaturated almost to black and white, and then you get the kind of chintzy red neon titles. Yeah, I kind of got a bad feeling about this movie from the title sequence, and I have to say,
Yeah.
I came in with an open mind.
Yeah,
I
okay.
knew nothing about it and was prepared to like it, but the title sequence is a rooftop chase between Stallone and
It's a race. It's a proper race.
a race, right? Yeah, and is it Legs, the character?
His name is Rat. That's Paul Mace, who was in Lords of Flatbush. After this, he did some Rockford Files, Hill Street Blues, and elsewhere, and then died in a car crash when he was 33.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, tragic.
So this title sequence is the rooftop race, and it's played out over the theme tune, which is sung by Sylvester Stallone. No special problem with that. It's just that this title sequence is comprised of about three angles, which
Yeah,
it keeps relentlessly cutting between and freezing on,
Mhm.
and it runs out of gas really quickly.
Oh no, man! That's
And then
this is the point where, as a 9 year old, I was in, and I've always kept coming back to this title sequence. When I was 9, I saw this and Convoy, I think, in the same year, and after that, I was like, any film that doesn't have slow motion in, that's not a film. And this music, oh my god! When I had my first car, I made myself a mixtape for the car, and I'd used a microphone to tape this off a VHS so I could play it in the car. I loved this song. And that rooftop race, I always loved that as well. Like just this idea of two men like leaping
yeah,
those.
it's a great idea, but you don't have the coverage to show it. You know, you want to see people racing actually across the
Yeah, there's
rooftops.
definitely a repeat on the angles. Yeah, I'll give you that.
And the angles are poor angles anyway, apart from the low angles looking up,
Mm.
which are occasionally, quite frightening. You want to see feet on rooftops, you want to see the rooftops passing by. I don't want to see
Yeah, yeah.
constant slow motion close ups of Sylvester Stallone's twisted face, grimacing and running towards you.
Oh, it's nice because you see the characters like start out bursting with energy, and by the end they're really worn down and desperate. I always like that.
Uh,
element of it. Yeah.
and the the annoying thing is as well is that it's set up as something dangerous, and this is the movie in microcosm.
Mm.
It's set up as something dangerous and edgy, and then it kind of fudges this at the end with like some low comedy,
Yeah, yeah.
where the guy who falls off the roof just kind of manages to hang on to some washing lines
Mm.
despite the other washing lines beforehand. He's just falling
Snapping.
through
Yeah.
them and they're snapping. But then it's a really, really bad low comedy shot, like a low angle
I
shot
know it's
looking up without,
proper.
I'm gonna get you, Cosmo!
Yeah, it's like it reminds me of Crime Wave.
Yeah,
That Sam Raimi movie. It just has that sort of like what?
what a double bill that would be. It's a movie that kind of pulls its punches at pretty much every turn.
Yeah, yeah. It
Uh,
goes for the PG, doesn't it?
it does, yeah. I guess it's handy to talk about the first act because it does kind of set the tone for the rest of the movie despite whatever else happens. The next morning is a scene. Could you tell me what Anne Archer's character's called? I just kept calling her Anne Archer because I was surprised to see Anne Archer in a film from the 70s.
Yeah, yeah. I think isn't it her debut as well? Anne Archer is playing the character with the inventive name of Annie.
Annie. Okay,
Annie.
well, that's good.
Yeah, it's easy to remember, isn't it?
So we meet Annie with some, I guess, does she have some sexy music behind her to introduce her as a sexy character?
Maybe, yeah. I mean, talking about the music, we've got Bill Conti
Yeah,
doing all of his usual tricks. Later on we get sad Bill Conti.
yeah.
Here we get sexy Bill Conti.
It's does he ever done stage shows? Because his music always reminds me of kind of like small orchestra stage show music.
No, I can't imagine you at a small orchestra stage show either.
So we meet Annie as Cosmo's following her down the street, basically harassing her.
Yeah, he's pretty creepy, isn't he? Pretty touchy-feely. It's
Yeah,
his brother's ex-girlfriend, and he's kind of pawing her like he has some sort of a claim on her.
again, I knew that I was going to be in trouble for the next hour and 45 minutes because Stallone's performance is energetic,
Yeah, I think he's trying to counterpoint Rocky, isn't he?
but the problem is the character that he's playing and every line that he's written for this character is so unfunny and just delivered with such energy and enthusiasm as if it's the funniest thing in the world, as if
Yes.
this is a really likable douchebag character.
It's all very first draft, isn't it?
It's really difficult to watch, and it kind of continues that way until the last act of the film when he quietens down considerably.
Hmm.
But most of the first half of the film is it's almost impossible to watch him even interacting with people who are doing well on screen. Everything that he says is annoying. The way that he delivers it is in the same kind of in-your-face bravado sort of way. It's performance of somebody who thinks that they are automatically charming and loved, but
But that's the character, isn't it? That's what the character thinks, and by the end, he has to go through this journey of self-discovery, and so he's changed at the end. That's it. That's
he's
the
not
arc.
changed at the end.
I like it that
Really,
you observe that arc and the subtle nuance of a character's 180 character change.
I don't know. There's good stuff going on screen, but it's all built around Stallone, and you know that this is a first draft script that's been rejected once and is now just being shot off the back of
Yeah.
the success of Rocky. It's a performance that's not really been thought through that well. I guess Stallone was just so confident in himself. The success of Rocky would do amazing things for your ego, and justifiably so if you've been the underdog for so long, and you think that yes, I have. I am.
Finally, the world's acknowledged.
Yeah, the world's acknowledged me, and the world loves me, and I can do this now. I can
Yeah.
I can do what I want, and it's difficult to watch.
Yeah, but I mean, you've kind of summed up Stallone's career there with these sort of massive peaks of ego and indulgence, followed by crashes after the audience has rejected him, and then slowly builds himself back up again with credible work, and then massive peaks of ego followed by a crash, and then a slow build up again. He hasn't got much time left, I don't think. But I think he's working his way back up now, isn't he?
Oh, he's got to pull one out of the bag soon, hasn't he?
After Last Blood, yes.
Yeah. It was nice to see Anne Archer. I'd sort of forgotten that she existed.
Yeah, right.
And yeah, but she was kind of like she was really ubiquitous throughout the late 80s, wasn't she? Early 90s.
Yeah, she was in the Harrison Ford, Jack Ryan films, I think.
Oh, she was the wife
Mm.
in those, wasn't she? So it's nice to see her in a 70s movie. Again, another questionable aspect of this film, which I don't know if anyone would have noticed or done anything about, is some of the styling. For a movie that's set in 1946, they do kind of look like they're heading off to Studio 54. Like Anne Archer's hair and makeup, and especially Bunches, the prostitute,
Yeah, yeah.
the kind of peroxide prostitute, looks very much like a dancer model from the late 70s.
Which she was.
So that's a little bit jarring. The next scene is where we meet Amanda Sante.
The third brother is Victor Carboni, and he's played by Lee Canalito, who was actually a professional boxer. He had a pretty decent career, I think. He retired undefeated. He was a heavyweight. 21 for zero, 18 knockouts, and he is now a trainer in Houston, Texas, with his own gym. And he's done a couple of B movies in the 80s, but I think he's essentially a boxer. Sly was his manager for quite a few years, and in 1985, Lee Canalito was ranked ninth in the world.
His boxing manager,
Yeah,
or his film manager.
his boxing manager.
How did he find time to manage a boxer whilst he was
I
doing
don't know, maybe
it?
that's why he was only ninth and not number one. But Sly's been around like the boxing game forever, hasn't he? He had that reality show with Sugar Ray called The Contender.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah, no, I'll get you the box set for Christmas.
I really liked Lee Canalito in this.
Yeah, he's got a lovely presence, hasn't he?
Obviously, the first scene or so, you're thinking, oh, all right, non-actor,
Mhm.
but then he's just fits the role perfectly.
Yeah, and he stays there, doesn't he? He sort
Yeah.
of keeps well within the parameters of the character. There's a couple of like moments that are just a little bit too childlike, especially in the climax.
Mm.
But yeah, I love him on screen. He's big, massive bloke, but really kind of limber and delicate at the same time.
But yeah, I think partly because he's a non-actor and he's not performing or trying hard in anything. He's just kind of there. He kind of grounds the whole thing.
If I'm skimming through it, we kind of get to see their life in 40s New York. We see Victor hauling ice all around Hell's Kitchen because we're just on the era of electricity and refrigeration, but a lot of people still depend on ice deliveries. Lenny working in a mortuary. This is obvious thing about him being dead inside. Yeah, I think one of the period reviews said that how obvious it was. We get this weird sort of nightclub that I keep going back to for no reason.
Is it Sticky's nightclub?
Sticky's nightclub, yeah.
Which is seemingly through a portal in time back into the 30s.
Yeah, sure.
I think Stallone saw They Shoot Horses, Don't They, and wanted a bit of that in the movie.
Yeah, and it reminds me a bit of Mean Streets as well. That sort of
Yeah, the
red wash and slow mo and tracking along the bar and stuff. I think, yeah. But the scenes themselves are completely redundant. They don't really do anything.
Yeah.
You know, in fact, Anne Archer, as much as I like seeing her on screen, her character doesn't really have anything to do,
beyond
in the film.
react to the two men. Yeah,
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
disappears off the screen
yeah.
by the end.
Yeah, that's it. She's not in the third act at all. Is she?
Yeah.
I think maybe those scenes are just there for Frank Stallone to take the stage. He's the nightclub singer.
Oh, I see. I was wondering. I've got one of my notes is that I was wondering why this nightclub singer was getting so much time,
Yeah, yeah.
and why perhaps in the second scene that he's on, why Cosmo wasn't muscling up on stage and insisting on doing a song
Yeah,
himself, because it wouldn't have been out of place.
Yeah, that's it. So yeah, that's Frank Stallone, also the singer in Rocky. He's one of the guys around the all drum.
Don't remember it that well.
I tell you where you might have recognised him. He's the bartender in Barfly as well.
Right. Okay.
The one that Chuck goes out in the alleyway to fight.
I guess the first major scene we need to talk about, which is just so full of strangeness, is the long scene in Marn's bar,
Oh,
the
yeah,
Irish
okay.
bar, where
Yeah,
they all
yeah.
drink.
I love that bar.
I like the way the bar looks. That's
Yeah.
about as far as I can take it.
What about having Tom Waits on piano?
No, I could do without that.
Yeah, okay.
In fact, if Tom Waits were playing piano in a bar, I wouldn't go to that bar.
You wouldn't pay £200 for a ticket to see Tom Waits play.
I wouldn't go and see Tom Waits for free. I've had his shtick up to here for the whole of my life. I'm sick of Tom Waits being on the curriculum as somebody you have to be into. I can't stand him.
Didn't you like him in
No.
Bram Stoker's Dracula?
No.
Shortcuts?
No.
What about that new Coen Brothers Western?
I quite liked him in that
Okay, there you
because
go.
he wasn't doing his
You
Tom
love Tom
Waits thing.
Waits.
Yeah, so Marn's bar, where we meet Victor and Lenny kind of consoling themselves around a table, and then
Talking about their wasted lives.
Wasted
and
lives,
how
yeah.
Nothing's going right for them. And somebody's died, haven't they, and left a monkey. Cosmo's got his eye on it because he sees it as
a money
a
making.
money-making opportunity.
And the bar seems to be owned by the movie's villain called Stitch. And his crew of stooges. They're the least threatening,
Irish mobsters. Yeah.
least violent mobsters that I've ever seen
It's
in
really
anything.
cartoonish, isn't it?
It's really bad. It's only the second time round because it keeps setting up scenes of threat, and you think, well, all right, well, this is sort of a film for grown-ups. You expect somebody's going to get hurt.
Yeah, what I really love about how ridiculous it is that Stitch walks in and he goes up to the bartender. He's like, "Give me the take, give me the night's take," and then later on he's like, "I own this bar, so Why didn't he just like go into the office and do it properly? Why does he have to lean across the bar and threaten the bartender, his own employee?
Have you noticed? Like, I didn't read any reviews of this. I know you flagged up Pauline Kael's
Yeah, I was
review.
like, do not read
Yeah,
Pauline Kael's review until you've watched the
I
film.
deliberately didn't read any reviews of this until after I'd seen it the first time, and somebody else said that the villain's more like something out of Dick Tracy.
Yeah,
Then I watched it a second time, and it's like, and it struck me. Why didn't I notice this before? Like Stitch dresses up in a ridiculous '30s costume, like a black suit with a big fat red tie,
yeah,
but all of his goons are wearing identical black leather and black berets, and it's
yeah.
just like this is the Adam West Batman show.
Yeah, or Jack Nicholson's Batman, isn't it?
Yeah,
Where the rest of his crew are all kind of in identical.
it's just, I guess, crap is the word.
Well, I think it's supposed to be a bit fun, isn't it? But the tone of the film is all over the place, and I think that's kind of
But
where its failings are as a grown up watching it compared to where its thrills are as a 9-year old watching it.
this sets them up as villains, and okay, so there's Frankie, the kind of grotesque wrestler character.
That's Terry Funk, man. We should take time to pay some respect to Terry Funk. He's from a wrestling dynasty, the Funks. Did you like him in this? He has like my favourite line in the film when they're talking about wrestling for $9,000, and he's like, for 9,000. Oh, it's probably better if we just play it.
For 9 grand, I'd tear my obnoxious, overbearing, smelly, ignorant, sweet mother's face off.
Yeah, I really like him in this. It's a shame he didn't do more like acting.
I can't really judge him and give him the respect that he no doubt deserves on the basis of this, because he's just made to look and seem so grotesque. I mean, he's constantly sweaty, but most people are sweaty in this bar scene. Cosmo challenges Stitch and by extension Frankie to an arm wrestling match with Victor in order to win the monkey. And this arm wrestling match, which seems to go on for about 15 minutes,
Yeah.
and has no tension whatsoever because it has kind of like light entertainment music under it.
But you know what? I really like the filmmaking in this scene. I like it that it goes completely quiet and you're just looking at the faces and the characters in the space.
Yeah, but
I thought that was really nicely done, really measured. It was one of my favourite things in it. On
but
review.
it's got the really weird bad movie music, and then it's got the long dissolves between people's reactions, which just makes everything seem really sluggish, and reactions are really stagey as well. What I was trying to get to was that Terry Funk is made not just to look sweaty, but to look as if he's actually slimy, like the alien or something.
Yeah, sure,
And
sure.
there's literally slime on his ears, and they've overdone it with the Vaseline.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And he looks so revolting in this that it's like it feels really bewilderingly grotesque.
Yeah.
Other gems from this scene is somebody pointing out how anachronistic Sly Stallone's long hair and earring are, and he just says, "Oh, it's my trademark."
Yeah, I
Says,
think.
well, it's your trademark, but you know, I think in '40s Hell's Kitchen you would have been vilified as a homosexual,
Yeah,
not just as a likable oddball.
it's another one of Sly's trademarks is the kind of repeated catchphrase throughout a film, hoping that it would stick and become like some sort of Clint Eastwood legendary line. He has one in Dredd. Do you remember in Judge Dredd where he keeps saying, "I knew you were going to say that"?
Yeah, because the source material doesn't provide enough catchphrases
Yeah,
that
that's
are
it.
already embedded in the public
Yeah,
mind.
yeah. Gaze into the fist of dread.
Yeah. And then my favourite, just the little, apart from the odd grotesque but quite cute little monkey, is the way that the scene ends after all of this with this kind of long, slow push in on Stallone as he's just talking gibberish, just this non-stop rubbish that any other editor just would have cut out of the scene.
Yeah, sure.
As if that's kind of like, you know, the highlight or denouement of the whole scene. I'm going to wrap it up with I'm just going to rap.
Yeah, yeah. That's it. I'm just going to improvise. Yeah,
Yeah.
it has that sort of freestyle improvisation.
You know, sometimes I wonder about nature. Now, me, myself, I'm a rough and nervy guy. But my brother there, who should be a real rough pecker, is about as nasty as a daisy. Don't you guys ever wonder about nature? Yeah, nature's a funny, funny thing. Hey, anybody want to buy a monkey? Gucci, Gucci, goo. You're gonna be worth a fortune.
Cut is what it should have had.
And then immediately after this is one of the things I was talking about before. You have a scene with Victor on the step eating ice cream. Stitch kind of comes up and says, "You and me have got business. you cheated Frankie in there, and it's like, well, he didn't cheat Frankie, he won fair and square. But is this a threat? Is Victor now going to get roughed up, or is there the threat?
Yeah.
But it just wanders off, and nothing happens,
Mhm.
and there is no threat from these villains.
Yeah,
It's just
it's bonkers.
puzzlingly lame.
Yeah, yeah.
So we're still wading through the first act, really. We get a scene with Victor and Susan, who's his Japanese girlfriend.
I guess.
Cosmo's making fun of her and calling her a chink, but then he's corrected. I think told her
Yeah,
she's
yeah.
Japanese.
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
I mean, she's lovely. She's a lovely character.
Mm.
She's sort of the kind, protective soulmate for Victor. But
They're
again,
talking about leaving Hell's Kitchen, aren't they, and getting a houseboat together in Jersey and forging a life. So I guess she's there as his motivation, because he's, this idea that he's a little bit simple, that maybe he hasn't got any other motivation.
but she's just kind of they just kind of meet in an alleyway a couple of times in the movie, and we know nothing
Read
about.
the dictionary.
Read the dictionary. I mean, we understand that they're both sort of childlike,
Mm.
but I don't really know anything about them beyond that.
Mm.
Again, this is knowing the whole film. I don't really see why she's there, because she doesn't factor into the third act at all.
Well, apart from him winning all the money, means that he's able to fulfill his promise to her of...
But I mean, that's off screen. I mean,
It's off screen, yeah.
She literally disappears from the film, as do all the
Yeah.
other women,
Yeah, yeah, totally.
which is an odd thing to do, given.
It's not about the women, it's about men. Naked men wrestling each other. That's all this film's about. It's what we're building up towards. Fine, talk about women as much as you like, but at some point we're going to strip off to our pants in the pouring rain and roll around like we're supposed to.
And then we come to a very strange scene which had me pausing the movie afterwards and looking at IMDb at the editor's track record. There's a lengthy scene in the middle of the night at the brothers' basement apartment, which is very, very, very run down. It's cockroaches and everything. Victor's up singing to his pet bird Ella.
He's up early, isn't he, to do his ice paper
I
round.
see,
That's
yeah.
why he's up at dawn to deliver the ice.
Singing a song to Bella to the tune of Frere Jacques, just singing it interminably in this kind of idiotic loop over and over, which is sort of annoying the other brothers, but not as much as you would think.
Yeah.
Not as much as it annoys the viewer.
Yeah, definitely.
And the scene seems to go on forever. It feels like a full scene that could be cut down to about 3 or 4 shots, and that's what made me wonder about the editing on this. It's
Yeah,
like,
right.
is Stallone so in love with this that it has to go on for minutes?
Mhm.
Like there's a whole thing set up with cockroaches on the table, and then Stallone grabbing a bat and whacking them, and then you see the aftermath of that as well. And
Well, apparently, there's an interview with Sly talking about how Universal interfered with the edit of this film, and they forced him to cut out 40 scenes. And he said he managed to restore 10 of them for the TV version.
Oh,
So I'm
dear.
not even sure which version we saw, but...
dear God,
Can you imagine?
40. Well, they must surely have been in the third act. They must
yeah,
have
maybe.
been.
But the third act is all the fight, like the last 15 minutes.
Yeah, but
is just...
there must have been some sort of back and forth between. I can't imagine there's room for another 40 scenes.
Yeah, can you imagine?
Yeah, and the scene just kind of goes on forever and is a real endurance test on every level. It's like the singing is like Chinese water torture,
Yeah, yeah.
and I can see that for for a couple of verses.
There's that bloody awful shot of the monkey tied up as well, which
it's really hard to watch.
yeah,
Isn't it?
it's really uncomfortable.
Which was apparently cut out for UK release by the BBFC.
Yeah, fair enough.
And then as you said, we were talking about these things before we started recording. We're into another montage.
Another Sly montage. He's getting to grips now with his Eisensteinian montages as we see all the characters going about their daily business, including Sly trying to be the organ grinder to the monkey who's refusing to perform.
I really like the monkey's anger in this.
Yeah.
It's really genuinely vicious, isn't it?
He fired his agent just after this, I think, that monkey.
There was a really puzzling shot in this, and I didn't realise quite who or what was going on. We see something which I guess is put in as a setup for something that pays off later on, but is still very puzzling. We see Anne Archer moulding clay, sculpting.
Oh, yeah.
But she's kind of, obviously she's got her hair pulled back and she's wearing something over her hair and she's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
made up, and you think, was that, who
Yeah,
was that?
it's so weird, that, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then later on, when Armand Asante comes to see her and she's sculpted his head.
She sculpted this oversized head of his, which is, okay, that's what the shot was setting up.
So
but
peculiar, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, what's her job? Because the only way she seems to earn money is by dancing with sad fellows.
Dancing for a dime or something.
Yeah. So it seems very weird that she would be like sculpting.
It's just
Yeah.
a script that needed a rewrite by somebody who knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
I guess at the end of this montage we get to meet Bunch,
Yep.
who is the hooker with the heart of gold.
Yeah, yeah.
Introduced with sexy saxophone music as the camera pans up her legs.
Thanks, Bill. Just in case I didn't know what was going on, Bill Conti's there just to underscore it for me.
Again, looking like she's just off to meet Mick Jagger and David Bowie before they head off to get in on the guest list. Who's the actress?
That is Joyce Ingalls, and she was a model, and I couldn't find out anything more about her other than that she's named in Sly's divorce that happened shortly after this film.
Okay. I really like her.
Yeah, she's really
She's
good, isn't
great.
she?
She's just an absolutely, again, perhaps because it's
She's a bit Karen Black, isn't she? She sort of has that, look that somebody that's in the moment, but also like trying to work out what's going on in her life.
and it's such a quiet, naturalistic performance that she just kind of glows compared to everyone else around who's trying very, very
There's
hard.
a lovely scene, I think it's a Christmas present scene, where she's like just tears of joy as she's just acknowledging somebody seeing her properly for the first time.
It's difficult to understand why she's in love with Cosmo. Something to explain that would have been useful, but I guess we just have to kind of go with it. So I guess after about what feels like about 40 minutes, we arrive at Paradise Alley.
Yeah, Cosmo takes Lenny there.
To try and cheer him up or something. And it seems to be, again, it's one of those things that feels like it's influenced by They Shoot Horses, don't they? It's kind of like a Depression era wrestling ring, bar wrestling ring, speakeasy type thing, although, again, it's 1946. There's an odd sort of repeated bit of dialogue here where, Cosmo's described Victor as being able to haul ice up 5 flights of stairs without blowing his breakfast.
Yeah.
And then he says the exact same thing here. Again, a rewrite would have done wonders. But yeah, I guess we're meeting everyone here at the Paradise Alley, and this is where things start to happen. Joe Spinell as the ringmaster, adding another flavour of sleaze to proceedings.
Yeah, he's brilliant, isn't he? Not many people can pull off putting on a clown suit and a clown nose and still be a little bit kind of threatening and funny at the same time.
And we meet, I think, the most kind of affecting character in the film, Big Glory the wrestler.
Frank McRae.
Tell me more.
You might recognise him from such films as Last Action Hero, Lock Up, Rocky 2. He basically plays, in the Sly movies, he plays a similar sort of character, and in the other movies he plays the loudmouth cop, chief of police.
Okay, yeah. Big Glory is the kind of incumbent wrestler, isn't he?
Yeah,
he's the guy he's the guy to beat at Paradise Alley. Nothing much really comes to the scene. Just introduces the place, doesn't it, and sets up the idea of Victor fighting there.
Yeah. So basically, Cosmo sets up the idea of Victor fighting there. Lenny says he doesn't really fancy it and that his brother's going to get hurt, and so Cosmo just goes and gets Victor and brings him back in and makes him fight that night. Doesn't it? It happens like straight away. And he's in the ring like 25 minutes after Cosmo's had the idea.
There's a very interesting scene following this. It's a short confrontation between Lenny and Cosmo where, as things stand at the moment, Cosmo's thinking of using his brother as his latest money-making scheme. And Lenny is the conscience who doesn't want to do that. And they have like a confrontation in the back street. And it's a very, very strange scene because of its absolute kind of Stallone vanity.
Yeah, that's it.
It's like it should be equal weighting given to either of these characters, but most of the scene just plays on Cosmo.
Yeah, that's it. And
with
it
Lenny's
tracks back and then tracks back into him as he's kind of shouting. It's his big kind of Brando moment, isn't it? It's pretty flat though.
It's bizarre. It's kind of like, you're waiting to see Lenny's reaction and you're just looking at his back because it's like a 2-shot with Lenny with his back to us and Cosmo facing us. And then that kind of plays out and Lenny turns around to face camera and it tracks following him as he walks away and Cosmo disappears into the distance. You think, okay, well, you've given some weighting to the actor. But then Lenny kind of goes off screen and, as you say, the camera tracks back in onto Stallone as he just keeps talking. It's like, this is so transparent. I just wonder how Asante felt when he saw the edit.
Maybe this is all those things that you don't like about Armand Asante. Maybe they come from this experience. It's sown him with so much resentment.
Lenny and Ann Archer are reconciled very quickly.
Yeah, I can't even remember what was happening here. Basically, all I wrote down was soapy love subplot.
And the whole scene ends with this bizarre freeze frame of them kissing or not quite kissing, and then a very, very, very slow fade through to something else. Yeah, again, it doesn't work, but it's there.
Yeah. Yeah, we get this whole sort of mid-act love triangle is really kind of unnecessary and drags the film. I think it's like an anchor just dragging it slowly to a standstill, which is really frustrating. You have I've got a little note here as an aside that Sly wrote a scene with him and Tom Waits, and he actually had the audacity to call Tom Waits' character Mumbles because they're both talking, and it is one of those like, come on guys, like enunciate.
Coming up soon is a big chunk of exterior shots,
Yeah.
which lend the film like this kind of visual gravitas.
Yeah, it is great.
That I can imagine if I'd watched it when I was very young, I'd be thinking, oh yeah, New York, mean streets, this is a raw movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a great sort of grey, grainy exterior shots of
And the whole thing of like pulling down the ladder from the fire escape and climbing up into the windows, all of those things that you see in movies. But this, yeah, you get those nice wides and you really feel the space, don't you? And all the, you know, it's period detailed. All the cars are parked up along the side of the road. It all looks, you know, really authentic.
I'm sure there'll be more to come, but I've said as much as I perhaps should about the character of Cosmo and how insanely written it is. But the shot where he's confronting
Insanely written.
the shot where he's confronting Anne Archer with his jealousy and anger because she's gotten back with Lenny, it's a
childlike,
puzzling scene.
Yeah.
Even watching it the first time, you're like, what right do you have to be jealous, and why is the film giving you a grandstanding soapbox to do this?
Yeah, it's peculiar.
And again, there's a scene immediately following. It's one of these fabulous exteriors with Cosmo and Bunchy on the rooftop. What a great looking rooftop.
Yeah, it's cool, isn't it? I'm surprised he didn't have like a pigeon coop or something just to sort of finish it off, you know.
Again, it's
Actually, you know what? I think he does that in Lords of Flatbush, has a pigeon coop a la Brando.
But again, the scene with Bunchy is another pointless scene where he's just venting his anger and jealousy at the woman who least deserves to hear about it.
Yeah.
And she even says at one point, "This is getting stupid," and you know, the viewer nods.
Yeah, that's it. Quite a good scene, I think.
Yeah.
Is where he takes Victor to see Big Glory.
I wasn't expecting this scene to be as good as it was. It was.
So that's Frank McRae. I think he brings so much like soul to it, doesn't he?
But even Stallone dials it down in the scene. You know, I know the motivation is that Cosmo doesn't want to be there and wants to get out as quickly as possible, but he says very little and he seems quite respectful.
Yeah.
And the bond between Big Glory and Victor I thought it was quite touching.
Yeah.
And just that line of Glory.
He's like, I'm your future, isn't he? Basically.
Yeah, but that line he said, you know, this is my place where I stay. You can come down and talk anytime.
Yeah.
So that's really sweet.
Yeah.
I was quite moved.
So we get this stuff with Cosmo trying to talk Victor into becoming a pro wrestler. Cosmo has failed to make any money off his monkey, so he's going to exploit his simple brother. And then Lenny is supposed to be the brother that talks them out of it, but slowly comes on board. And so this sort of middle act is mostly about convincing Victor to fight when he doesn't want to. He's quite a peaceful giant, but his career as an ice hauler is coming to an end with the advent of electric refrigeration. People don't want big blocks of ice delivered every morning to keep their food cool. And after lugging a block of ice up 16 floors and not throwing up his breakfast, he reaches the top of a really long stairwell.
But it is basically an excuse to have a fabulous slow motion shot.
Beautiful slow motion shot of like a 1 foot square cube of ice being thrown down 3 flights of stairs
and exploding as it hits the landing.
I mean, beautiful lighting here, Laszlo. It's fabulous, isn't it, as it explodes?
I've like watched this twice and then I ran it back to watch it again. It's like, I don't know. There's a key light in there somewhere, somewhere hidden, like behind the camera or offset, which is just set to catch the ice as it explodes.
Yeah.
It looks amazing.
It's so fabulous.
Practicing by the docks, Lenny turns up.
The training scene. It's not quite the Sly training montage that we're used to, but you know, it's quite nice. I like how rough and dirty it is. It's like, pick that up, throw it in the water, bend that pipe. You know, it's really shit training.
Lenny turns up and seems to have undergone some mild moral reversal and seems to be quite slimy and spiv-like, doesn't he?
Well, that's it. But he's back with his girlfriend, so that's
his confidence is
the negative
boosted,
effect
isn't
of women on.
So we're heading into a big fight montage now, I guess, which highlights a lot of the script problems for me.
I think it almost shows that you don't even need a script when you have like beautiful images. You can just layer them up and sort of sit back and enjoy
It's like
montage.
like being in the room with Stallone in 1976.
The craft of filmmaking, the purity of cinema.
It's Victor's has to do what, 40 fights or something at Paradise Alley.
It's his. It's quite quickly his debut and then entire career, pretty much, isn't it? In
Yeah,
one sequence.
in one long sequence.
The
But
brevity
this,
of it, the precision of the filmmaking, the craft.
yeah, I can't help thinking that I'd be more invested in Victor's fighting career if it was spread out more over the film. If instead of wasting so much time on female characters that aren't going anywhere, which sounds terrible, but they're not going anywhere. If somehow they were worked into a story whereby they cared about Victor and they cared about what was happening to the people instead of it all happening within a montage.
Yeah, I mean, you literally get like Lenny's complete reversal.
Complete reversal,
He's
and
counting the money, isn't he? Like a
yeah,
proper
and
Scrooge.
he's dressed up like a 30s gangster with tie pins and all sorts going on.
Sly
His hair
goes
slicked
from
back.
cheering to shaking his head by the end of the montage. So
And this all happens within a montage, and this is basically what should be happening within the second act.
It should be the film.
Yeah.
It should be that. The triangle of the three brothers, and one realizing that he's exploited and put his brother in a vulnerable position, and the other one realizing that his capitalist,
Yeah.
ambitions are jeopardizing the dynamic. That should be the film.
And following this, I mean, I'm going to leap forward slightly. We get a scene where Anne Archer breaks up with Lenny because she doesn't like what he's become, or he's prepared to leave her behind. He says, "I'm climbing, and you don't have a head for heights," or something like that.
Random, isn't it?
If you want us to feel something about that, why not space it out throughout the movie so that she gets to see him change gradually? I mean, I know it's again, this is like script writing 101, and it would result in a boring movie. Mm-hmm. But why not structure it that way instead
At least
of
explore it
Yeah.
before you commit it to paper? Yeah.
it would be a boring movie, but at the same time it would make a lot more sense than these two things happening like that. Weird. But you like the montage?
I love the montage. Yeah, all those. For me, that's the sort of the meat of the film, is all those huge men leaping around the ring, slamming each other. I find that really mesmerizing. Ted DiBiase's in there, actually, one of the wrestlers. Yeah. Okay. Don't worry about that. Don't worry about Ted DiBiase. Yeah, I just really love that sequence. Like in an era of tightly choreographed fight sequences that are sort of surgically precise, and I think I'm quite numb to that stuff now. I still find this sort of organic reality of those huge men just lifting each other up and slamming down. I find it's really authentic, and it feels like hard work. And
yeah, it feels painful. I don't know anything about wrestling apart from what my elder relatives used to watch in the early 80s on Saturday afternoons.
Yeah, yeah.
There's surely more to it than picking people up over your head and throwing them to the ground.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, there's obviously the Grecian wrestling, which is what we see in the Olympics. That's the kind of foundations for the sport. And, I'm not a wrestling historian. I don't know anything about this sort of transition from when it was in the kind of the back of bars and when it was in the circuses and theme parks and that kind of thing, where you just go in and wrestle some bloke in the ring, to the point where it becomes mass entertainment. And I'm hoping that this sort of era is the last of the kind of real street fighters.
We get a weird little interlude with Christmas with Stitch and his gang.
Yeah, I mean it's all very strange, but there's two things I really like about the end of the second act. I like seeing Tom Waits and Terry Funk singing Christmas songs together. That just every time that makes me giggle. And I love the stuff with Old Glory as well, and where Sly takes him out drinking, and they sort of, I mean, it's carnage. They smash the whole street up.
Yeah.
I thought by the end of that scene, he's really like credible as somebody that's just he's run out of life, basically.
I thought the stuff with Stitch and his gang was peculiar. When I watched it the first time, I quite liked the quiet moment between Frankie and Stitch, when he's asking him, "Do you think I look older?" and that sort of thing. It's like, oh, it's like friendship here.
And Stitch has bought him a robe, hasn't he? Like a wrestling robe. So we know that he's heading towards the ring at some point. And it just says "kill" all over it, but it's in like sort of the colours, the Irish colours, as well, shamrocks, and yeah, it's really sweet.
I was worried. I know we talked about it before, but the scene where Lenny and Anne Archer break up, I really was worried that this was setting it up for like a reconciliation romance between Cosmo and Anne Archer by the end of the movie. But I mean, it's unfortunate that Anne Archer drops out of the movie at this point completely, like without a trace. But it's less unfortunate than that happening.
Lesser of two
evils. Lesser of two evils. I liked the Christmas scene, as you said before, with Cosmo and Bunch. and it does suggest that Cosmo's kind of like committed to her now at
Yeah,
this
he's
point.
talking about taking her away, isn't he? I think he's
Yeah.
got his eyes on the money as well. They all have now at this point.
But yeah, you're saying that the scenes with Cosmo and Glory, the Christmas fun hijinks thing, I really wanted to like it. I didn't think it would be quite as crazy as it
Yeah,
was.
I mean they were thundering down the street, smashing down like street lamps
And
and causing like
but it was
property damage.
clunkily made. I mean, you get the scene with Stitch and his gang kind of singing Christmas songs to establish that they're in their bar. But then you come back to that again, and you don't need to have that establishing
Yeah,
scene.
sure,
You could
sure.
just, before the truck's about to come in the window, cut to them there singing a song for a
Yeah,
couple
yeah,
of
yeah.
lines, and then it comes in.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, it would have paid off. Maybe they needed that shot to bridge some other bad edit. Yeah.
And there's some, with the truck smashing up the fronts of people's, like, those banisters on stoops are actually made of stone. They're not
Yeah,
made
yeah.
of wood, like the truck.
Polystyrene.
With the truck kind of barreling through these wooden banisters, which are actually stone. And but then again, this movie's so kind of like toothless that Cosmo and Glory drive the truck into the window of Stitch's bar. And Stitch just stands there. Nothing ever happens as a
Grr,
result.
I'll get you.
Yeah, turns round and throttles his, well, I say girlfriend, but, one of the women in the bar.
Oh yeah, I forgot that.
And nothing comes of it.
Yeah,
You
that's
think they'd
not
be
good.
out there with guns and knives shooting and
Yeah, yeah.
they get plenty of time to get off a shot. And I liked the scene with Glory's suicide, which reminds me of the Elephant Man, when you reach that point where you're probably going to be happy for the last time in your life.
Yeah, yeah.
But it was kind of drawn out, and I felt that the jumping onto the rubbish barge was just a humiliation too far for me. It was really grim, that.
Yeah, yeah.
And that Cosmo realizes after he's jumped that first time, and then laughs when his fall is broken, but then he jumps in again and just does nothing apart from feel sad.
Well, yeah, I mean, he stays there, like, until the sun comes up the next day, and we have Bill Conti's sad music playing underneath, just in case you're not sure what's going on. So, I mean, what is there? What else is there to do?
Okay, I guess you're automatically straight through to the big fight now, aren't you? You set up the gambling for this game, and then this wrestling match, and then you're into it.
We get the negotiation. So the big match is Thumper versus Victor, and Stitch is very upset that his window's been broken. So he wants to wager more than $500, and Victor offers the full $9,000, and that's where we get that amazing line from Terry Funk. You can't argue with that, the quality of that writing.
Is somebody else? Is there an intermediary handling the money on this? Is somebody else like taking the money and
Well,
holding it?
you'd
Is
hope it's, Spinelli maybe at Paradise Alley.
I'm hoping it is, and I'm hoping that the film proves that, because we'll come to that.
Maybe it's honor amongst thieves.
Yeah, well, so this is a big fight. It's pouring with rain, and the rain is leaking into Paradise Alley, and the ring.
The ring, yeah. That square thing with the ropes on is called a ring, Matthew.
The ring is waterlogged. There's a huge puddle in the middle. There's stock thunder and lightning sound effects coming through from the outside world. This is a big fight with no
The
time.
electricity's on, all the lights are on. It's probably the most hazardous wrestling match in history.
There's no time limit. There's no rules for this fight. Yeah, I guess it's basically the fight that goes on forever, isn't it? It's just a long montage.
Huge, dreamy montage. I really love this last fight. For the reasons I was talking about before, just the fact that it kind of feels like a long, massive effort for the men in the ring. Like it's hard work, and they push and they push and they push, which is frustrating because the sort of climax of the scene undoes all of that. But when you're in the ring with them, I really like their physicality and how hard they have to work at this fight. And I love there's a scene where Terry Funk gets thrown out of the ring, and he just like pushes the crowd away, takes one step onto the side of the ring, leaps over the ropes, bounces once, and then does a flying drop kick on Victor. And like the athleticism of the man is so impressive, because they are these massive slabs of meat. So to see them be so light of foot and so precise, yeah, I still find it quite breathtaking.
As somebody who's less spellbound by that, I found it went on a long, long time.
It does go on forever.
And again, the moves all seem to be the same move. There's a couple of like
There's a triple cut in there, isn't there?
there's a lot of, I wouldn't say double actions, but there's a lot of kind of cuts to emphasize what are effectively the same. I'm going to pick this guy up and throw him down
Yeah,
in the
that's
water
it.
in slow motion.
And then you've got Bill Conti again, just reaffirming how difficult it is. Yeah,
I've got notes. I've got my notes about this fight, and then on the next page it just says the end,
yeah, right.
and that's it.
Yeah,
And
it's
it's
sort of, this kind of epic battle grinds on, and the men are sort of ground down, and then it's almost over, and then it sort of descends into this kind of pantomime chaos as all the characters are in the ring, and one of them's wearing women's clothes, and it's a complete shambles.
If we take it step by step,
I want to brush over it. I don't want to do it step by step.
At some point, like Joe Spinell jumps in and calls foul.
Yeah.
But this is a fight with no rules.
Yeah.
There's no fouls, all right? And then I think Victor menaces him.
Yeah,
or
it's
something.
because Frankie punches him after the bell's rung. So that's and then they just say, okay, Victor's won, and then the gangsters are like, no, think again. He's like, okay, this guy's won, and then there's a big fight, and all the brothers are in, and the gang, and flick knives, and women's clothes, and
yeah, somebody pulls off Stitch's trousers, and he's wearing suspenders, which it lends another dimension to the scene earlier where they're all together for Christmas, and there's that bonding, and you think, all right, so Stitch is. I don't know what's going on there. I also think it's a bad move because unless the money's in escrow somewhere, if you humiliate the person who owes you money, who doesn't follow the rules, then they've just lost their money.
Yeah, sure.
They've won, but they've lost their money there.
Mm.
All the conflicts between the brothers are wrapped up within one kind of laughing, cheering exchange, which makes no fucking sense.
I know, it's the worst.
The whole thing about, why did you leave it till the 22nd round? Because I was born on the 22nd.
Mm.
What?
What? Yeah. Huh? Wait a second. Yes, because it feels like you're supposed to know that. Like,
yeah.
Sorry, he was born when? What difference does it make?
And you're thinking, all right, this must have been re-edited, okay, by the studio, but there's no amount of re-editing can make that be not an intentional ending.
Unless they cut out 40 scenes of Victor's birthdays throughout the years.
Yeah, and then that's the end.
That is the end. Nice traditional freeze frame ending of people hugging in the ring.
Yeah, and then you go back to I think it's a freeze frame of the race on the rooftops, don't you?
Well, then it goes back. So you obviously stop the movie straight away because then it goes through a freeze frame montage of shots throughout the entire film, leading right back up to the climactic moment.
I didn't stay for the credits, no.
All right.
Well, you've been a really good sport. I've taken the piss out of the movie that you recommended.
I was hoping that you'd some joy.
I was hoping that because you recommended it,
in some of the montages, I thought you'd be like, okay, there's some nicely edited sequences there, and they're not kind of the fight scenes that we're used to. There's something kind of elegant and operatic, and I want to say over the top, but I'm just setting myself up for a joke that you're not going to get.
The question we traditionally ask ourselves at the end of this is, would you recommend this?
Oh yeah, 100%. Who you'd recommend to? Yeah.
I would honestly,
in the world.
I'd honestly recommend it to anybody who liked 70s movies and that particular style of photography.
It's an interesting counterpoint to the rest of 1970s cinema.
No, I'd recommend anybody watch it, but with the sound turned down and some good music on in the background, because photographically it's great.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really great to look at.
Yeah.
But in the same way, I like Spielberg, but I couldn't recommend 1941 for anything beyond the photography and the visuals. So I would say the same of that. I mean, I would never recommend it, but I'd say if you're going to watch it, just either turn it down or off.
But don't you think, like with this, part of the appeal would be making somebody sit through, Sly singing and his kind of roller coaster performance?
No, I mean,
it's another word for terrible.
I think if it hadn't been Sly, and if it hadn't been off the back of Rocky, if it had just been like a freakish movie, you could recommend it as kind of a camp classic. But the fact that it exists in that continuum, and you know where it's coming from, and I'm just shaking my head throughout, going, oh, yeah. It's that pure vanity project where everyone involved, apart from the person who's spearheading it, knows it's a bad idea, but it's just got to be done.
Yeah, I think at the time, one of the period reviews was from Time magazine, and Frank Rich said, as an exercise in egomania, Paradise Alley almost puts Barbara Streisand's A Star Is Born to shame. But then reading in a biography of Stallone, it says, the thing that people forget is that A Star Is Born made over $100 million and this flopped. Like
Star Is Born is not bad either.
You watched it recently, didn't you?
Yeah, I've got no argument with A Star Is Born. I'm completely agnostic on Barbara Streisand. I know almost nothing of her work,
Sure.
and so. But I went in, and there's a couple of like big numbers that she does, where you're like, I can see why she's a megastar now. I can kind of see this, yeah.
Paradise Alley was released in 1978. Can you think of other films that came out in that year? When you see the sort of menu for 1978, you see why it didn't reach an audience.
Well, I can see that it didn't reach an audience on its own merits, not because of the competition.
Oh, no.
What was this?
One of Sly's reasons for its failure was something to do with it being released in November, and his mum's astrology chart had said that was a bad time to release a movie.
Right. Wasn't Superman out around that time?
Superman, yeah. So 78, you had Convoy, Superman, The Gauntlet, The Duelists, Days of Heaven, Sorcerer, Deer Hunter, The Driver, Blue Collar, and Invasion of the Body Snatchers. That's a good year.
Yeah, that's a great year. I think it lives and dies on its own merits.